All right, Mr. D, let's talk a little bit about soil prep. So where you want to start with that?
The best place to start with soil prep is by getting a soil test. That's the best thing,
That's
don't guess soil test. The best time to do that is now, if you haven't already done it. It's always best to do it in the fall if you're under ideal conditions. And the main reason that you want to do it early is because you're going to get a recommendation on lime probably. If your soils tend to be slightly acidic in our neck of the woods, and most garden vegetables need a relatively high pH between 6 and 6.5, and it takes lime a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, to bring the soil pH down. Now, with that being said, if you haven't done that, go on and let's do a soil test now, and then you go on and plant your garden, and it's best to put lime out now than not to put it out at all if your soil needs it. Now, the only time I've seen cases where you did not need lime, once every 3 years, 2 or 3 years, is if you scatter your garden ashes regularly, ashes from your fireplace or from your fire pit out in your garden spot. But you need to remove vegetation from where you're going to plant your garden, and you can do that with a tiller. You can do it with chemicals if you want to, or a hoe, or something like that. You need to remove any unwanted vegetation and get in there and till the soil. Do not do that when it's wet.
Right.
And clods are, if your soil has a fairly high level of clay, and if you can pick up a wad of it and squeeze it and water comes out of it, you don't need to be out there working in it. Give it a little bit of time and let it dry out. Because those clods, when they form, if you work the soil when it's too wet, they will stay with you throughout the growing season, and they don't just dissolve, unfortunately, and it interferes with the soil seed to root, the seed to soil contact and root to soil contact. So make sure your soil is dry enough to work, when you get out there and work it. Till it, work it up. If you want to try to garden a little bit earlier than normal, you can throw ridges up in the fall, 6 to 8 inches tall, or pull ridges up with a rake. You can do all these with hand tools, and that will allow the soil to dry out a little bit quicker, and it'll be a little bit warmer in the springtime. If you're gardening on ridges, you can do that. Back in the old days, we would go in there with a breaking plow and break it, and then we would disc it, and then we would drag a harrow across it, and then lay out the rows, and put the seed in the ground, and that all of those things could be spread out over months. You could break it in the fall, disc it in the spring, and or you could do all of that at once. So there's a lot of different ways to prepare your soil. The soils that we have in this area here in the Mid-South, for the most part, tend to be pretty good soils.
Right.
We do have some soils that may be a little high in clay content. If you have a Sharkey, a gumbo, bless your heart, you do need to amend that with organic matter and maybe some sand and things like that. But if you have a silt loam, and you can look at, there's a soil survey in every county, in every state of the union. And you can go and if you don't know what type soil you have, you may think you know what type soil you have, but if you go look at your soil survey, you'll be able to determine exactly the name and what type of soil that you have. But a lot of people in this area automatically assume that they have too much clay in their soil. Clay is a very valuable component of soil. It helps in the water holding capacity of the soil. So you need some clay.
Helps hold nutrients.
And the only place that we have really the Sharkey soils and the gumbos really are in the river bottoms. And if you happen to have a house that was built in a river bottom, then you may have a very, very heavy clay soil. But most of the soils are silt loams, wind deposited loess type soils. And they're just ideal for growing things. And if you don't believe that, look at the size of the trees that you have growing around your yards and in the neighborhood and things like that.
Right. I actually heard Mr. Jim mention that before in one of your talks. I mean, you have to have a little clay in the soil,
clay is
right?
good.
Yeah,
Clay is good. The main thing is that you want to grow plants that enjoy that.
Right.
You know, there are a lot of plants that don't like that thing that we sell in the nurseries, and so a lot of people fail with plants just because it needs to be up elevated. It needs a much sandier soil, drain much faster. Percolation rate through our clay is very low, very slow. And when you dig a hole, and particularly if you over improve it by putting lots of what you think is good stuff in there, it just becomes a soup bowl of water, and then the plant just drowns basically.
Good point.
Yeah, and you need to be careful about, many times with our landscaping and things like that, we might interfere with a drainage. You need natural drainage, and if you have somehow set your, using beds or by setting up berms and things like that so that you hold water, then that's not a good thing. So you need to allow the water. Don't allow water to stand, basically,
right.
if you can help it. And if you do have water standing where your garden is, then I would ditch it, or try to pick some way to get that water on off there so it doesn't stand.
Or
a lot of plants don't like wet feet.
Or plant rice.
yeah, plant rice. Rice does okay. Yeah, but a lot of plants, most plants don't like wet feet. Cypress trees do fine, and rice.
Right, and definitely a lot of your vegetables don't like wet feet either.
They do not like wet feet. They do not, and that. But if you do all that, soil test. Now, if you haven't soil tested, then you can put. I hate to do rules of thumb, but there is a rule of thumb. If you want to put a garden, and you can garden now. I mean, you could have been gardening all winter. There are cool season vegetables that grow, onions and radishes and things like that. It's not too early to start gardening right now. However, there are a lot of vegetables that you don't want to put out until after the average date of the last killing frost.
Right.
And that's getting close. It won't be long, and it's going to be time to go with everything. But rule of thumb, in the absence of a soil test, use 2 to 3 pounds of 6-12-12 fertilizer or its equivalent per 100 square feet of garden area. If you haven't done the soil test and you want to garden pretty quickly, you can put that out there, broadcast it evenly over the soil surface, incorporate it into the top 6 inches of the soil, and you'll be okay. But get a soil test.
Get a soil test.
And that way you'll know whether or not you did too much or not enough.
All right. Well, appreciate that, Mr. D.
Yeah.
Always soil tests.
Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. To find out more information on this topic, just click on the familyplotgarden.com link in the description.